Well, hello everybody. My name is Mike Chambers and I'm a developer advocate for Amazon Web Services and I specialize in generative AI. It's a huge privilege to have this position because it means that I get to play around with all of the toys and I do it for my job. It's excellent. So I like to build generative AI solutions, play around with the technology, but I also like to communicate and reach out and just work with developers as much as I can. I've spent the last few weeks here in San Francisco. I'm not San Francisco native, but I've spent the past few weeks here going to hackathons and meetups and just meeting so many people. The energy here is amazing, and it's awesome to be here at the Generative AI Loft here. So I want to start off us today just by doing a little bit of a recap, just so that we're all on the same page, and we've got this sort of basis that we can use to then dive down into the deeper technical topics that we'll have later on today as well. And then I want to go across a brief history of generative AI. And don't worry, this isn't going to take a really long time. And I'm not going to go all the way back to, in the 1970s and then the 1980s, which I would love to do. And it is true, this technology really does have its roots that long ago when we started to look at machine learning and we started to realize I say we, I wasn't doing it, I was barely born, but when people were starting to realize the capabilities that we could do if we had enough compute power. So we're not going to go that far back. We're not even really going to start to talk about going as far back as sort of early natural language processing and BERT models and those other kinds of things. What I want to do is I want to take you just a couple of years ago, because there's been a lot that's happened over the last couple of years. And with generative AI and the technology that we have that most people, I'm sure everybody in this room has seen, has moved forward so much over just the last couple of years. So a couple of years ago, cast your mind back, you probably recall, but a few things happened and all of a sudden everybody, and I'm not talking about just us in this room, the technologists, but people outside of here started to play around with these tools. And they were using chatbots. And I know it looked nothing like this. I just really enjoyed this picture when I asked for a picture to be generated of a chatbot. It's a bot that's having a chat on their phone. I know, go with me. But chatbots became a thing. People started to have these chat sessions with generative AI. It could respond back to you. It kind of seemed a bit magical. It was amazing. We also had image generation. And I want to remind, maybe you don't remember this. I don't remind you of this. Image generation was a real thing early on. There was lots of people on YouTube generating images with Midjourney and with Stable Diffusion. The early models are there going, wow, look at this is amazing. And so this is kind of where, for a lot of people, it started. And I want to pinpoint this place because it's the reason why this is so transformative, the reason why this is so big is because it's touched so many more people than just the technologists in this room. And people are using these tools today as well, and they were using these tools, and the term AI doesn't really belong to us anymore. So it used to be, a few years ago, I'd do presentations I talked about machine learning back then, before it was cool, right? And so we would do machine learning, we'd talk about machine learning, we'd talk about AI, and we'd talk about, this umbrella term, and we try and define what it is. But all of a sudden now, the whole of the rest of the world is talking about AI. And what is behind the scenes of that? I'm going to talk about a few key pieces of terminology, and many of you probably know these terms, maybe for some of you they're new. Behind the scenes with generative AI, foundation models. This was really the significant change that happened, was that we started to create machine learning models that have these broad capabilities. So it used to be the case, and it actually still is the case in some cases, but we create machine learning models with fairly large data sets for us, and we create these machine learning models that do a specific job. And we use them for classifying our customers, or we'd use it for classifying images and saying, there's a dog, there's a cat. That's the example that everybody gives. Or hot dog, no hot dog, that kind of stuff. That's the kind of models that people would train. And there would be reasonably big jobs for the individual developer or the individual machine learning engineer to do. But what's changed here is these foundation models are trained on vast quantities of data, eye-wateringly huge amounts of data. And the models that we create and that have been created can be used for many different tasks. And so all of a sudden we have this massive capability, and we as and developers, and now this new breed of AI engineer, can start to look at these models and think, how can we apply these to challenges and business problems that we've had that we've never been able to afford to use machine learning for before. So these foundation models, and again, we're on our quick history tour here. So we had, the ability to create images, right? So we had these text-to-image models, but we also had these, the large language models. And hopefully this is a term you've heard of. But large language models, these are still to this day where most of, I get in trouble with saying this a little bit, but this is where most of the actual value from generative AI comes from today. It's from large language models, these foundation models that have been trained on vast quantities of text data. And so what do we get from that? We get models that are really good at natural language. They understand natural language, and through that understanding, they have these emergent properties where they can start to do things beyond just generating text. This is a slide that I have shown pretty much in every single presentation I've done about generative AI since I started, and I hope they'll continue to do so. It's old, right? So this image is generated with a very early version of Stable Diffusion, I think, and this text has been generated with an earlier version of one of the Titan models, I think. And I just want to use this because, again, we're going with this brief history, but this is how a lot of people saw those technologies in the early days. And what we would do, and what we still do today, is we type in this part, this bit here. In natural language, we're asking for something to be created. And this part of the process is called a prompt. And you've probably heard of that. A prompt, it's a piece of text that we write to basically persuade the model to do something to have an outcome that we want to see. And so this prompt gave way to the next really important term, which we spoke about so much just a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago, which is prompt engineering. Maybe you've heard of this term. And it used to be like, we want to hire a prompt engineer, we want to do prompt engineering. And I don't hear it spoken about quite so much anymore, but it is totally a thing. Prompt engineering is actually still the technology or the mode of working under the hood of pretty much everything that we're doing on the AI engineering side of generative AI. So examples of the kinds of prompts that, and I'm going to go super basic to start with, like write a poem about. These are very much the kinds of things that we used to do. Write a letter, tell my boss I've resigned, but in a humorous way, those types of things. Generate a list of ideas for interesting, something slightly different. So actually, can we use the generative AI model capability to help us to make some plans, help to do some ideation, simple kinds of stuff. But then we start to get something a little bit different, okay? So this is a bit different. So in this one, hopefully you can see the idea that concept is an input that we can give. So explain something, this concept, as if I'm, and so in the example I'm giving here is that we can actually put our own information into the prompt. It's kind of really obvious when you look at it like this, but this was something which was kind of discovered. Like we could do this in context learning. We could provide it with our own information, and all of a sudden, the model's doing more than just writing poems for me. It's actually working on my data. Okay, things are getting more interesting. Here's another prompt. I've split it up into different colors just for readability's sake, essentially. Nothing more than that. Where we're saying, classify the sentiment of something. And we're giving it these examples. So, I love this product. That's a positive sentiment. This movie was terrible. That's a negative sentiment. The weather is okay. It's kind of okay. That's a neutral sentiment. And then we get to put in our text, our thing, the thing that we want to measure, and we wait for the generation. So what's happening here? Okay, so for those of you that may know or don't know, this is few-shot prompting. And what we're doing is we're giving examples to the model to explain what we would like the output to be. Now, there's a couple of things happening here, right? So in one case, just at a very high level, we're explaining to the model that we want to perform sentiment analysis. And it's kind of in the first part of the sentence, like classify this sentiment. But we're also showing the model how we would like the output to arrive. So we're showing it's like it's a single word. We're really only expecting it to be positive, negative, or neutral. We could put more examples in there. And so we're expecting the output to be like that. So something's just happened here. This is actually, I think, quite profound. So it used to be, and it still is, but it used to be that we would program computers with curly braces and brackets and numbers and things. Now, we're writing in natural language to a model to try and persuade it to do what we want. This prompt engineering is now, it's part of the engineering process. It's part of how we create application stacks. And this kind of thing, whilst it seems super simple, is still, to this day, what is happening under the hood. You go and rip apart LangChain and take a look. It's stuff like this, which is happening behind the scenes. So, pretty cool still. All right, let's carry on with this sort of brief history. Something else happened that you might have noticed, that models kept getting bigger. And as models got bigger, that meant that they took up lots of resources to host. It meant that we use a lot of cloud-hosted services because that's what makes sense. The parameters inside the model, which essentially is the measure of a model's built-in knowledge or intelligence, that's a debatable point, that gets bigger as well. And also the context size gets bigger. So the size of the actual text that we can send into the models, they get bigger as well. And as models get bigger, their emergent properties and their capabilities got better, and they're getting more intelligent. And I stand by that. Artificial intelligence, the I is intelligence. They're not conscious, they're not alive, but these models totally are intelligent. And you can go to models and you can ask pretty specific questions. And you can ask these models like, can you tell me who won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2023? And you get this like nice, super long answer. So yes, the Nobel Prize in Physics 2023 was awarded to Dr. Amaro Winston. Except that's not actually true. And so this is where I want to bring it. Some of you knew that, right? Some of you were like, that doesn't sound familiar to me. And so this is the idea of another key term that we need to be aware of, which is the term, the hallucination. Now, this isn't particularly fair. I don't like to use this term a lot, if I'm honest with you, because it implies that the model's done something wrong. All the model was trying to do is statistically and mathematically produce an output that felt like it was probably right. And it felt like it was probably right. I don't know how far down the explanation you got. It started to get a bit far-fetched. But it's not right. And so we now have to turn to a question. What do we actually want from a large language model? And this is something I found myself getting to about a year ago, through this short history. What do we actually want the large language model to do? And my contention, and what I want a large language model to do, is to not actually retain specific facts about who won the Nobel Prize in a particular time and year, but I want it to know general world facts. I want it to know that up is up, down is down, the sky is blue, usually. I want it to know that kind of thing. And I want it then also to be able to then reach into repositories of facts and of truth, of my truth, if it's my truth, and my documents, and be able to go and retrieve information from there. That's what matters to me. Great point in case. Like if you go to a large language model today, and now some of the larger ones are wise to this and they'll be more specific, but go to a smaller one and say, who is the president of the United States? As of time of recording, as of time now. Well, it's as of when the model was trained, it will come back with an answer. And it doesn't matter what your political leaning is, by, I don't know, is it February next year, that won't be the case anymore. And so if you go back and ask the same model the same question, it will be wrong. So I don't want a model that knows that fact. What I want is a model that knows what a president is, what the United States is, and how to find out the answer. So we have large language models, and we have all of our data, the data that sits on the side. And what we want is a way for a large language model to interact with that. And so this, again, we're on our short history, is one of the next things that happened, is that people started to figure out architectures, so some code that we can wrap around our large language model that can help it to actually interact with that live data. Spoiler alert, remember prompt engineering? Remember that we could put our data into the context way back when we're talking about prompt engineering? That's all it is, but we wrap it up in a fancy term, and we wrap it up in some fancy technology, and we call it Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG. And so that's a really hot topic. It's what a lot of people want to talk about. At the end of the day, it's prompt engineering, but it allows our models to be able to use factual data, some data that I can update every day, every hour, every second. It could be live data potentially, and we can get access to it through retrieval augmented generation. But it's more than just generating text. Actually, it's not more than just generating text with a large language model, but it is also more than generating text. It can do more things. So we can do reasoning, we can do planning, we can do problem solving. I say we, I'm talking about the models. Maybe I feel like I am connected with them. They can do these steps, and this is really valuable, right? So again, all it's doing is it's using its natural language ability to be able to plan, to reason, to problem solve, and to set out, think through step by step, if you've heard of that one. And so it's just generating text, but it's giving itself some instructions of what to follow, about how to progress on in the world. And so this gives us enormous capability, and it gives us the ability to start to put together systems that can, where the large language models not just connect into those data stores that we have, but what about if we give it access to do things in the world, to connect to APIs, to call other systems, to affect change, to have agency. Agency is where the term agents comes from. So we can build these agentic workflows, and again, with both retrieval augmented generation and with agents, it's not about changing the model, it's about wrapping some application code essentially around the model and giving it the opportunity, or giving that whole application the opportunity to go and interact with the outside world. And that more or less brings us up to current state. This is what people are very excited about right now. It's retrieval augmented generation and agents and agentic workflow. Agentic is, I love that word. If you need to update your spell checkers, then do so, because it is a real word. And I also just need to mention multimodal. I haven't mentioned it up until this point, but multimodal is also a thing. So it is possible to not only put in text and get text out, or put text in and get images out, but some models also take images and text in and produce text out. You can put audio into some models. You can put video into some models too. There's other kinds of workflows that I briefly am going to mention by putting up this slide. Okay, so that brings us, I think, up to pretty much today. It's a whistle-stop tour. I probably missed a bunch of things out. But I think what I've highlighted there is some of the really key important things. It started out with just basic generation, write me a poem. And the same underlying technology. Honestly, the models really haven't changed very much at all. All the model providers who are here today will disagree with me and tell me how amazing they are now. But fundamentally, they haven't really changed much over the last couple of years, apart from getting bigger. But what has changed is our understanding of what we can do with them. And so retrieval augmented generation, agents, that's what's happened, and that's brought us up until this point. So, where can we find generative AI today? Where do we find it in our day-to-day lives? And you might have individual stories about this, and I'm very looking forward to hearing about them. But predominantly, it's chatbots and it's image generation, right? That's still happening. So people are still using chat interfaces. And obviously, as you probably can tell by now, I've liberally used image generation for the whole of this presentation, because it's now a requirement that all PowerPoint presentations have generated images in them. So this is still a thing. And the opportunity is there, right? So there is so much opportunity for AI engineers and for developers to actually build on top of this capability to actually go and realize that value. So a lot of money and time has been spent on building foundation models. A lot of time and money has been spent on the intermediary frameworks and things for things like retrieval augmented generation. The opportunity there is now for us to build on top of that and really take this to the next level. And of course, people have been doing that. So specific use cases, which I have personally seen and worked alongside are things like document processing. So generative AI and its ability, especially with language, is really good at taking unstructured or semi-structured data and then making some meaning from it. That essentially is what retrieval augmented generation does. So you can point the models with a bit of application code at an unstructured document, which really the value of the data inside of that's just not, you can't realize that without a technology like this. And the generative model can go and read that document and then answer questions about it, or extract that, or convert it into a JSON structure, anything like that. So document processing, huge thing, huge part. Taking documents in, figuring out where the invoice number is, and all that kind of stuff. Stuff that we did before, but now we can do it in far more efficient, or far more rich way. Customer support agents absolutely is happening. So these agentic workflows that we're talking about, we're now starting to see agents which are autonomous agents that can take non-deterministic inputs. The customer says, I love your product, which is what we really want to hear. And at that point, maybe the agent, customer support agent, I don't know, maybe it does nothing. Maybe it responds and says, awesome. Maybe someone else comes in and says, I hate your product, and this problem, this problem, this problem. And an autonomous agent can understand what's coming in. It's the basic sentiment analysis from earlier, I suppose. And then link into the tools of an agentic workflow, and then link into the knowledge base of retrieval augmented generation and say, oh, you're having this problem? That's a common problem. Let me help you out. So customer support agents can totally be built and are being built using this technology. And then the next one I want to talk about, this is a huge one, and I kind of just left the big one till the end, right? So one of the places where generative AI is having a significant impact, it's very disruptive, and it's also super cool, is developer tools. So for any of us in the room here who write code, whether we're a developer or we just like to pretend we are, like me, then these developer tools, super awesome. So we can use generative AI to help us write and ship code. And it doesn't have to be that the code we're writing has anything itself to do with generative AI, but we can use that tool to help us write and ship code and ship products. And with all of my fingers crossed, and with all of your best wishes, let's try and go over to some demonstrations, see if we can see this in action. Now, I'm not going to show this a lot for multiple reasons. But the main reason is because we have workshops later today which are going to be talking more about Amazon Q Developer. So I've got my code environment here, so hopefully you can all see that. I'll make it slightly bigger. So this is Visual Studio Code. And inside of Visual Studio Code, I have a plugin installed called Amazon Q Developer. And it's free for personal use. And it's a plugin which can assist me in writing code. I'll give you a super quick demonstration here. What I've got is I've started off a Python script, because that's what I write. It's perfectly capable of doing other languages as well. And the first thing I've done is I've imported Bodo 3, because that's the SDK for AWS. It has nothing to do with this demo particularly, but I just automatically do that at the beginning of every Python code I write. And then I've got a comment here. So anything that starts off with the hash, it's a comment, it's not going to execute. And it says, write a Lambda function. Maybe I should give that a capital. Write a Lambda function that takes text input and converts it to speech. Okay, so that's the task I've given myself for today. Okay, I can go and hit up the documentation. I can do that. I know that that's possible, but it's going to take a few different services to make that happen. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit enter on this line. And what happens is Amazon Q is in the background going, okay, I see that comment. I see the context of everything else that you've got in your code, which admittedly is only one line, import Boto 3. Is it a bit difficult to see? Maybe it's possible potentially for us to bring the lights down just a tiny bit. And we can show you this in more depth as well. One of the things about this is it's actually written it in super light code, super light text. If I press tab to accept this, maybe you can see that it has actually generated some code. Right. So it's also on a screen behind you as well, if that helps. It's just behind you there. Okay. So a little tricky to see in the lights, where we'll take a look at that today as well. So it's written a piece of code for me. That's a super, super simple example. I think Banjo, who's over in the corner, knows way more about this than me as well, and is probably saying, there's so many cool things you can do. But this is a simple example. It's written this in the context of the code that I've written elsewhere. Again, it's super simple. I've got import Boto 3. But maybe I don't really understand this. Maybe I want to know more about this particular function here. So I'm just going to highlight this function and see if I can get that to go to the bottom. I'm going to hit up the Amazon queue. Oh, no, I'm going to right-click on it and go to a queue here and say, explain. I'm clicking on something that says explain. It was small text. And then over on the side, in a chat window which comes up, it starts to explain that code. Now, I didn't write the code, so it's actually pretty useful that something's coming and helping and explaining to me what that code does. Imagine that I got this code from somebody else from some other time, or even worse, from me from 6 months ago, and I don't know what it does. And I can right-click on it and say, explain this code. These kinds of tools are having a significant impact, a positive impact on the amount of code and what we can ship. It's really cool stuff. All right. Let me save that. We can ship that later. As I'm in demo mode, I want to show you some other things. So hopefully I can figure out where my other things are. Yeah, okay. So I'll get into, in a moment or two, I'll show you a little bit more under the hood and the way that you can start actually developing, because we are in a developer day, developing alongside some of the APIs to actually build some of this technology into your application. But before we get there, I want to show you this. This is Party Rock. So it's a completely free platform, and it's really open to anybody. Anybody can use this, and anybody can start building generative AI demo applications. And so I love spending time in here. And I show it to people of all abilities, people who have never touched a line of code before, people that ship generative AI models. Everybody loves playing with this, and I'll show you why. So you can use it to build applications, and you can use generative AI prompting to build an application that itself uses generative AI. Let me show you what I'm trying to say. So partyrock.aws is the URL. It's not worth putting a QR code together because it's such a simple URL. I'm going to click here, Generate App, and it says, okay, what app would you like to generate? Okay, this is pretty basic stuff. So I'm going to, and if anyone's seen me do this before, just put your hand up. I'm going to do a day trip planner. So a day trip planner seems good. I'm going to hit Generate. Okay, so what's happening at this point is it's taking that prompt and it's running it through the engine inside of PartyRock to actually build us an application, which hopefully will be a day trip planner and will help us plan out an awesome day somewhere. So it is doing a fair amount of work at this point, so I will continue to waffle, and we decide where we're going to have our day trip planned. Okay, so this is what the application looks like. It's got this text that's written up the top, which sounds like it's some sort of like introduction. So this app will help you plan a fun and memorable day trip. Well, excellent. Then what's it got here? It's got the starting location and the travel distance. So how far are we willing to go, and what interests do we have? Okay, so let's say, here we go. Okay, San Francisco, and then we can right-click and we can spell that correctly. And we say, how far are we willing to go? I don't know, 10 miles seems reasonable. Interests is tech and AI. All right, so these boxes that it's just generated for us here are input boxes. Anything with the sort of white text at the top or the white banners at the top, it's an input. It's generated those for us, and let's see what it's going to do with them. So I'm going to press the play button here. And if I scroll down, I have a day trip itinerary here. So we can all start to pass through this and see if we agree with it, but it's come up with a day trip for us. So here's a one-day trip itinerary, blah, 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 blah. So it's taking us to the Exploratorium, which I still haven't been to and I really want to go to. The Computer History Museum, also same again. I don't actually know if I'd be able to get from the Exploratorium to the Computer History Museum in that time, but I don't know. It's come up with some ideas. So it's a simple application, and we can tweak it and we can work with it some more. But also, we need to understand how it's working and remind ourselves of some of the things that we saw earlier on. So this actually isn't connected with any external data sources. It's using information that it has inside of the model. And we'll see which model it's using. So if I click on this little button at the top, Edit Widget, which is just in the top right-hand corner, we get to see some of the parameters of how this particular widget is set up. And so let's have a look inside of here. We get to give it a name, fine, the day trip itinerary, and then we get to choose a model. So this is a foundation model. This is actually a instruction fine-tuned foundation model, which is capable of doing this generation. In this particular case, it's chosen Claude 3 Sonnet, and it's got a list of models you can choose from the Amazon Bedrock service, because it's Amazon Bedrock under the hood, which is making this all happen. But then this is the bit I think is really interesting. So it's a prompt. This is prompt engineering right here. And so in here we have create a one-day trip itinerary for someone starting from starting location. And if I hover over this, it'll highlight that that's where it's getting its information from. So you can start to see how this is pulled together. Super simple variables in here, which are then inserted into this prompt, just like that prompt engineering example we saw before, and it generates the output. So we get to make the change, and I am contractually obliged to type what I'm about to type. Write the output in the voice of a pirate. It's what we do. Okay, so I'm going to press save on that, and then I'm going to run that generation again just by pressing the play. And ahoy, matey, you be seeking a swashbuckling adventure in the... And as you can see, you can read it yourself. So you can see how you can change the prompt template and do interesting things. There's much more complex scenarios you can actually set up in here, and you can actually tie together the outputs from some of the widgets to the inputs of other widgets. I want to skip to my favorite example. My colleague Antia is here today. I don't know if you know Antia. She writes articles on the AWS news blog. I would suggest you go to the AWS news blog on a regular basis because it genuinely is very useful. I go there to find out what's happening. And so if you see in here, I'm not going to go into the articles, but these articles talk about launches that have happened and releases that have happened at AWS. All right, these things take people a long time to go through. They're very carefully crafted. Let's see if we can speed up the process for my colleague. So I'm going to go to this one that I've already written called the News Blog Writer. And we're going to incorporate a couple of the techniques that we've been talking about. So with this, there's actually a little bit more going on. So let's just take a quick look through here. We've got a service name. I'm a big tea drinker. I'm a big fan of tea. So let's call this this is a new service we're launching, and we need a blog post for it. Okay, this is a fictional scenario. So the Elastic tea service, that's what I'm going to call it. And what does it do? It's an API for making hot tea. Because I love that. How awesome would that be? I've got a couple of other things in there, like what regions are we going to launch in? And remember the few-shot prompting that we looked at before? Well, this is that, but just to the next level. In order for something relatively simple like Party Rock to be able to write an article for us, I'm going to give it examples of existing news blog articles so it can see what they look like. So I have some PDFs here. These are PDFs of news blog articles. And I'm going to load 3 of them in. Here we go, 1, 2, and 3. And if we were to look at the prompt that we've got here, as you might imagine, it's quite long. So it's like you're an assistant writing news blog, it's giving a bunch of instructions on how to do it. And if we scroll down, it's got here are some examples of the posts to use, include the service name, all of those bits. This is prompt engineering. But look, the prompt's much bigger. The models are now bigger, remember? They're more capable. You can put more into them. So let's get rid of that. And let's press play on that, and let's see if we can generate something interesting. So it's going to generate the news blog for us. So it's given it a fictional, it's hallucinating, right? I'm fine with that because this is where we are. So today I'm excited to announce the launch of the Elastic Tea service, a fully managed service and it uses all of the context that we gave it and starts to just basically do the blog writers team's job for them. So I actually don't see Antia in the room, so maybe it's good that she doesn't see this. Okay. It's even got code examples in there. I love it. So you've got T-type Earl Grey, and you can that's excellent. That's one of the best I've seen. And you can also see that I've changed together the generations. So it's actually using the output from the blog post to write a text prompt to actually go and generate an image of what the service looks like. And there you go. That's the Elastic T service. You saw it here first. Let me quickly, just really quickly, I want to go into Amazon Bedrock. This is inside of the AWS console. If you are a developer, and I'm sure lots of us are on a dev day, then this is where you get to actually build this technology into your application stack so that you can actually use the generative capabilities of generative AI models, such as text generation, image generation, in your stack. I won't go through this in a great amount of detail. You'll have much more opportunity to look at this inside of some of the workshops today, and people will be more than happy to take you through the console as well. But here we've got a couple of things that are probably worth pointing out. We've got models from a number of the different leading AI providers around the world, including many people who are providers who are here to talk to us today, which is super exciting. We've got some playgrounds on the side here, and so we've got the ability to work with the different models. This is actually a really great place to start your development process, to start doing some prompt engineering, to figure out how you're going to write the prompts to work for you. If I go to Image Playground, this is where I spent, I don't know, the last few days making all of the images for the slides that you've just been seeing. So I can select a model in here. I'm going to go to Stability AI. I was actually using Stable Image Ultra, but if I go to Image Core, it's super fast, right? I'm just going to select that one, come into this and say a frog riding a bike, because that's what I do. And look how fast that was. That was pretty amazing, right? And I could look at frogs riding bikes all day, but we don't have time for that. Also in here, just a couple of things to point out. Agents. So I talked about agentic workflows. We can build agents inside of Amazon Bedrock agents. It's fully serverless, it's fully managed for you, and you can actually just create the prompt which details how the agent should work, and then link it off to the tools. They're Lambda functions. They scale. You can actually hack something together pretty quickly in here and then scale to production. And I've been driving my hackathon colleagues nuts with this. It's awesome. It's like, I need to put together a quick agent to say, no worries, tap, tap, tap. Here, I've got an agent. There's an API. Oh, by the way, it scales to production. Next, I want to just quickly point out as well is knowledge bases. So we talked about retrieval augmented generation. Now, if anybody's tried to put one of those together, it's a little bit involved. There's a few steps you've got to do. With a typical scenario, you need a vector database, you embed your data, you do all this stuff, and we'll have more sessions, no doubt, today where we talk about this in more depth. With Amazon Bedrock knowledge base, you can basically get a corpus of documents that you've got and go from there to basically with a couple of clicks. It's almost not worth demoing because it's so easy to do, but it's awesome, the output. Just with a couple of clicks, you get your retrieval augmented generation that you can then build into your agents as well. So there's a bunch of stuff in there. There's lots of time today for us to talk about how all of these things work. Before I finish up, I'm going to do something which is usually not advisable, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the future and make some predictions. So it's never a good idea. Don't even know where I put my clicker. Anyway, oh, there it is. Okay. Thanks for coming on this journey with me. I enjoy talking about this, and I want to carry on having these conversations today. So what is the future going to look like? Now, there are some things in here which are probably super obvious, and I think there are some things in here which I hope are a little bit insightful. I think we are just at the very beginning of all of this. We are just at the very beginning of all of this. This isn't really a prediction, but I'm going to tell you this right now. Things are moving so fast. The capabilities of the models are increasing all the time. people are coming up with new ways to use models, like retrieval augmented generation, and we've got agents, and we've got code interpreters, all kinds of things which are coming out. And these are all innovations that developers, AI engineers, and people like us are building on top of these capabilities. And I'm sure if we come back here in 6 months' time, I'll add another one to that list, because we are really, truly just at the beginning of figuring out what we can do with this. Another prediction. Say goodbye to the tiny models. Things are going to get more capable. Models are going to get more capable. So in addition to us coming up with new ways to use the models themselves will become more capable. Users, the people who are using this technology, will come to expect personalized experiences. They will expect software to start being more bespoke for them. Chatbots aren't going to be in every single application, but there's going to be a lot more of them around. I'm already on my personal email on my phone. I don't read it anymore. I just chat to it. Have I got any important emails I need to get back to? That's the kind of thing that we're doing. I'm kind of expecting that from my technology, and users in the outside world will expect that too. The other thing here, and as we saw from Amazon Q Developer and those developer tools, is that more people will be able to develop more software. It's not a case that existing developers are going away or anything like that. But this technology is putting the capability in the hands of way more people to develop much more value and to develop more pieces of software. It's a really, really exciting time. And I'll leave you with this. Right now, if you haven't already, is absolutely the time to get started. You're not too late. Things are, as I said, just getting going. So if you want to start now, then ride this wave with the rest of us. I guarantee you'll have an awesome time. Thank you so much for your time this morning, and thank you for attending this presentation. I will take questions shortly, and really enjoy the rest of Dev Day. Thank you. And if there are no questions, then that's fine too. I have a question down here. Now, we should have some microphones roving around. I am one of the people that will be carrying the microphones around during the day, but I'm up here. So we had a question down in the front here, Seema. Is there a schedule for today is the question. There is one just on the board just outside this first room here. I've taken a picture of it because I felt that was the easiest thing to do. Yes.
Agentic side, the software industry has gone through all these, orchestration, synchronization, information exchange, sharing, and all these things. So, what do you see from the framework that is coming agentic side that's, something on top of those things, or some of the vendors, some of the open source, they will participate in that agentic AI development activities or not?
So I think the question, the agentic workflows are absolutely burgeoning. They're becoming a thing. There are some frameworks. Are you talking about, is the question, how does that sort of relate to workflows that we had in the past? Or,
Well, the past experience, whether it is getting into these AI-related or GenAI-related context, that augmentation to happen.
Yeah, so look, I think that we're just getting started. We're figuring out. We have a presentation from LangChain today, who is one of those predominant frameworks for it. Maybe it's something we can take offline and sort of talk at more depth about. But it's just getting started. I think that, I'll come and talk to you more about that, I think. Everybody cool? All right, so we have another question, sorry.
Quick question.
Oh.
How can we find about Party Rock and, the news blog? It doesn't really mention it. It's been always new. The last time I was here 2 weeks ago, we never heard about Party Rock, for example.
Oh, okay. partyrock.aws is the site for Party Rock. So that application I was showing you was something that I've created in my Party Rock account. And if you have your own account, you can make your own apps. You can also share them with other people as well. So you won't find the news blog writer in your Party Rock account unless I share it with you, which I'm happy to do, or you make your own. So it's for experimentation with generative AI. Where do you find out about new things, I guess was the core of the question. So definitely the AWS news blog is probably a really good place to go. But also community.aws is another place to go, which is a blog platform which everybody in this room is welcome to write posts for, community.aws. So let's have a look at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thanks for the presentation. At this rate, that things are changing so fast, what do we do with obsolescence?
Yeah.
You know, you build something, tomorrow something better is here. You know, what do you do with the things that you're developing, and as the time goes by, they become obsolete?
Yeah, look, so obsolescence and do I build something today because something better might come tomorrow, and actually making the economic choice. I'm not going to say that I've got a solution for this. This is a challenge. Having worked in the cloud industry for such a long time, I'm kind of used to it as well, but the time frames are compressing now more than I've ever seen it before. I've been having a number of conversations with a number of very influential people about this, and the best I can come up with at the moment is you have to make your punts. You have to make your bets on where the best place is to invest your time and attention, but then you have to pivot quickly if it looks like that's what you need to do. So if you're working at fine-tuning a model and it makes total sense to do that today, and then in a couple of months' time, another model comes out which makes your fine-tuning no longer relevant, then you have to pivot, try to avoid sunk cost fallacy, and just be like a startup. We all have to be like startups. That's personal opinion. I don't know. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. I don't have a great answer for you. All righty. All right, thanks everybody. So, looking at the time, I think we've got just a few minutes before we're going to go into our next session. So if you need a break. Also, the workshops are starting now as well. So if the workshop is something you'd like to do, then take a look. There is limited space, unfortunately. So if you don't get into the first one, maybe get into the second one. But yeah, I'll see you back here in just a few moments. Thank you.